Good morning, Herbert. I'm honored to have you on the show. I know that you made the time. You are in Europe now. You are at 1 p.m. and I am at 7 a.m. in New York. And that's the beauty of digital, actually. Things that we're going to be talking about is the connecting people together. So just to introduce a little bit about you, the way I know you is I worked with you on that implant registry, and we will talk more in depth about it, which is a database at Stroman. And you have a PhD, a very impressive PhD. Molecular biology and systems biology, and I'm somebody who fascinated in the biology from Zurich, and you teach also in clinical evidence and biosafety at Lucerne University, and you live in Switzerland also in Basel, right? Okay. And you've had also an interesting career. You went from engineering, basically. You worked on BLX system, and also pivoted back on something you're passionate about, which is data in medical field. Am I describing it correct?
Thank you very much. Actually, for me, it always feels like my career started in the workshop of my father because he was a table maker. And if I wanted or not, I had to join him. And he always said, a table maker thinks with his head and with his hands. And I very much relate to the dental profession because it's like your head and your hand. And when I heard about medical technology and medtech after my PhD, this was actually, I connected very much to this, that it's science and it's very medical, but it's also this arts aspect that if you don't have it in your hands, you would never be great. So
yeah, no, it's fascinating. You worked on the VLX, you worked also on torque fit. Also, it's a prosthetic component, and then you pivot back to data. And this is something that is really not very well explored in dentistry, and we need to talk a little bit about it because as you know, I did a master's in healthcare leadership and MBA at Cornell, but they talked a lot about the data and the safety of it and how to use it and what's the benefit of it and what is the ethics in it, because in data you can sell it and in medical you're not, you're bound by ethics, but the data is gold. It's like the oil in dentistry, in the healthcare, and in dentistry is not been explored. So let's start first of all to tell them how you and I connected through the implant registry and what is the implant registry.
Well, I mean, let me first thank you for the real honor to be on your podcast because I'm a podcast addict, and whenever I do the laundry, I'm volunteering for the laundry because then I can listen to podcasts, and you're one of the few podcasts that I tend to listen not only once, but sometimes twice or three times because they're super insightful, and I really feel honored to be in the same podcast like Ed Petrosian and Dr. Khan and Dr. Nisnik and all the people. So thank you very much for having me. Coming back to your question, I think it's really interesting because if you look in what makes you successful, there's always this idea, or there's this principle that what you want to improve, you need to have an awareness about it. And so there's a lot of emphasis on financial KPIs, there's operational KPIs, but very often like the clinical KPIs, they are like a gut feeling. So I think it's super important that everybody's aware that it's important, but they're not treated the same way as other KPIs are treated. And what the implant registry now, and there are several reasons why this is. One of the reasons is that very often people have like this fundamental understanding that they say, I see my patient every day, I see the patterns and I know what's going on. And to a certain extent, this is true. However, our brain is very good at many things, but it's not very good in statistics.
Hmm.
And so the basis in order to improve is really to collect the information that you can see over a longer time scale, also to see what you don't see. And the implant registry allows to do that. That is not only, it's a system that helps you to track key clinical parameters that are validated by a team of experts, including you. But it's also how to store it, how to be compliant to the data protection laws, but also how to draw conclusions from it. So it's a really end-to-end solution to collect and use the data to generate insights, to put like things on the table that are sometimes like implicitly there, but never like put on the table.
I mean, I love the fact that you talked about the the dentist or the professional sees it, knows it, it's in their head. But on that point, I want to mention to you a book by Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He is an economist. Obviously, he took an winner of Nobel Prize. But in his book, he talked about this bias, this intuitive bias of intuition, and he said that we are so confident about ourselves and we are so into our bubble that we sometimes convince ourselves of the error, and data is important to prove to you either you're right or wrong in a way or not. So
Yes.
it eliminates the bias. That's the beauty of it. So just for the listener that don't know much about the implant registry, Stroman has a platform. They call it Access, right?
Access, yes.
Yeah, and on it they have other things, but one of them is the implant registry. So it's a place where the clinician or the staff enter the implant that they place, the biomaterial with it, and then they can track them with time if they failed or if it succeeded or whatever aesthetic outcome on it. They put also the medical and stuff. So it's a depository of the data, because all the management softwares that we have does not allow to register those things. You just scan a paper, you put it, but scanning a paper and having something substantial there that you can export and analyze. So that's where the trick comes, where we as a clinicians, I had the opportunity to learn about using Excel sheets and stuff like that, but a lot of people don't. So why don't you guide us a little bit about, we put that data there, and if we want to go back and look at it.
Yeah. Actually, it's great that you mentioned the Excel sheet because
Yeah.
this is a place where a lot of people started. So we see that a lot of people understand the importance of collecting data.
Mm-hmm.
And as being the former product manager of BLX, I traveled the world and I could
Yeah.
see always, like on a regular basis, all those people that really aim to be the best,
Mm-hmm.
they almost always had some way to track, be
Mm-hmm.
it an Excel sheet or some other spreadsheet document. And what we see like on a regular basis is sometimes they would approach then Straumann, the clinical operations department, said, "Oh, I've collected data. Can you help me to analyze it?" And
Mm-hmm.
just last year, there was a case of a doctor. He has collected 2,300 implants, very meticulously collect a lot of data and said like, I'm not sure, is there something strange in the mandibular molar region? Can you help me to analyze? But he collected very few data points about the actual product itself, only the implant line, but no dimensions. So it's very limited what you can collect or what you can draw from this, except for, well, statistically, you can say there's a problem or there's something significant different. So the next step would be like, is it the patient? Is it the indication? Is there something about the dimensions? what's the pattern underlying there. And if you don't have like a proper collection, then you've spent a lot of time collecting it. You can identify to say there's something potentially out of the ordinary, but you cannot go to the second level to understand better what's going on. So what we did
Yeah,
with the implant registry is we collected like it. So what I want to say is you need to understand what you're going to do in the end with the data that you collect before you start collecting it, because otherwise you might end up in the dead end road. And this
correct. And
typically takes a couple of loops and a lot of years. So we take out the loop and we take the best practice in a system with a front end. So on this browser, you can collect data, those standardized parameters that then also have in mind what you're going to analyze in the end. And so actually the data entry, maybe the most important thing is there's drop-down menus and you can scan the QR code of the product. And it's not only Straumann products, but it's 88,000 products in the dental field. And the goal was to make it so easy that you can delegate it to your assistant. And then you focus as a practice owner on understanding the outcomes and not entering the data. And I think this is what we see very often with the Excel sheet. Either it's like very basic that you can delegate it, or it's very thorough, but then it's so complex that you have to do it yourself. And with the implant registry, you can have like both sides of this metal. And then, because there's a lot of parameters that we calculate that you collect, and then we calculate as a logic from it. For example, if you know the tooth extraction date and you know the implant placement date, you don't have to think about, what's the ITI protocol about placement, because we calculate this for you. So you're already like off and you don't have any mistakes when it comes to that. So all these assumptions are taken out and there's like real calculations. So there's different levels of analysis you can do at the end of the year already built in.
already built in, yeah. So that's the beauty of it. And if they want to analyze it deeper, what can they do?
So you get different levels of output. So the first thing is you get like each month, I guess you get this as well. You get your email just saying how many implants did you place, how many immediate implants did you place, did you have any failures, and so on. So and how does this compare to last year? The second thing is that you have a dashboard, that you get like an overview with the most basic information about your patients, about the implants that you've placed, and so on. But if you really want to go deep, then you can download an Excel sheet. And this Excel sheet has already a lot of pre-calculations in. So in those different tabs, you get like one overview of all your implants. You get one overview of all your patients. You can own one overview of all your complications and always the related stuff to it. And as I think you have shown me a couple of weeks ago, all those different tabs allow you to do the analysis and you're still close to your data. So you can do all kinds of things if you're only interested, or if you're mostly concerned about how many implants did I place on a certain period, you just use a filter, but you can go quite deep and compare immediacy rates over time with complications just by using those filters.
Yeah, and that's a very important thing, and we talked about it. So just to tell that there's, a lot of people listen. So just to tell them that there is, when you are at the beginning of your career and you're doing a little bit implants here and there, but later on you're gonna be deeper in your career, and then you basically today it's good, everything is electronic, but if they look at us when I had the written paper chart, and paper chart, especially if you have a patient came, put an implant, and then they don't come back, so you deactivate the chart goes down into the archive, and then 10 years later, 15 years later, somebody will call and say, hey, by the way, what's that implant that you placed on this patient? Now, with the implant registry, they have it, they can go on it, and they can tell them, hey, by the way, we did this implant and so on, and that's the diameter. That's one part. Second part, which you're saying, is when you're gonna get busy and you're gonna start looking at inventory, because that's where the cost becomes a headache. You know, you wanna what diameter should I have always in my drawer, and the length, and that's where implant registry and the spreadsheet give them a beautiful insight about it. What do they order most of the time, and this way they can control their cost anyway. That's one simple benefit of it, not too fancy. But if we want to go deeper, is like you said, that the gentleman that asked you, I'm having issues in the posterior, and he collected this 2000. It's very hard to go back on all of the 2000 and re-enter things to find out what you have a problem in. So that's the beauty of the implant registry, to start doing it with the right data entered. So how do you eliminate the bias in this data that you are allowing them to enter?
Well, you're asking the really big question there. Well, there's all sorts of biases on it. And to a certain extent, this is also the nature of real world data. So this is if you do a clinical trial, you try to remove all the variation, that you can focus it on one question. And this has the advantage that if you have a difference, you can identify to say, okay, it's only the variation that I had because I removed all the other variation. So if you want this, and this has a very important part in identifying things in real life. However, of course, the real world data is actually, we do have numbers. So we see that 47% of all patients. So in a clinical trial, you try to have healthy patients, because otherwise you have just a lot of variation. I recently did an analysis, and I could see in 47% of all the patients at least one additional risk factor, be it smoking, being diabetes, being bisphosphonates, or one of those obvious parameters. So this makes analysis very hard. But to be honest, the biggest challenge that we have is that you collect 100% of all your cases in your clinic. I guess this is the big challenge for everyone. And this is something that we can only support you to collect. However, if you do it, then you of course profit a lot from the outcome, because then at least you know that you don't have a selection bias of your patients, because you include everybody. And the other thing, of course, the technical bias is that you enter things wrongly, because you can scan the QR code. There's no error margin on this. And the drop-down menu also reduces the error margin on this. So when we've supported some clinicians to transfer their Excel sheets into a database. And then, of course, we identify all the problems, and we see that this is quite a challenge, especially because the human error is always there. And we did some cross-check about entries in the implant registry with the dental sheet. And there the quality is very high. So this isn't the least of our problem. So
and the most beautiful thing, as you said it's open platform. It's not limited to only Straumann products. So it's open for everybody, every implant that anybody can use.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to get on it, do they need to be a customer of Straumann, or how does it work?
No, actually, they don't have to be a customer of Straumann. So they need to ask for a Straumann account, but this is a free account. And then they can use the implant registry on Access also for free. This is actually the only free service of Access from Straumann, but it's a free service, and it's going to stay free. So
what's the benefit for Straumann of doing that?
Oh, there's a couple of things, but in the end, I think it all relates together. If you're a premium company, then our customers expect premium, and they deserve premium because, to be honest, they also pay premium. So Straumann always has been a scientific-oriented company, and we proud ourselves that we have the premium outcomes, best outcomes. So there's been a lot of trials going on that show Straumann being very good, but the ultimate test is your own practice in your own hands. So in order to democratize the outcomes, that's the best way to say not all implants. I mean, if you say all implants are the same, it could be that all implants are the same, or it could be that you've never looked. And now we provide you with the tool to say, I can prove in my own clinic, with my own biases and my own problems, is there a difference or is no difference? So for us, of course, it makes perfect sense to give everybody the chance to prove for themselves the superior quality of Straumann.
Yeah.
But of course, there's more to that. So there's also ultimately there's a big shift now, of course, with this digital revolution and the digitization of also of value generation. And we believe that real world evidence is a huge asset for everyone. So we want to also unlock this asset for our customers, that they continue to have like the premium solutions that they want to have. So for example, like a very clear example, if you scan the QR code of your product, then you have like 100% tracking. And there's a lot of countries where you are obliged to give your patient a detail about the implant that they have received. It's called like implant card or implant passport. So because it's already digitized, instead of putting the sticker on this credit card and giving it to the patient, and the patient is going to go home and lose it or don't, whatever. There's now a digital version. So it's a PDF that you can either print out and give the patient, or you can send it to the patient. And if they lose it or they would like to have it again, you have still a record of an one-to-one replica. Or the other thing is you can, as you know what you have used at the end of the recording, you can reorder the products directly via our eShop. And finally, if something goes wrong, and there's always some implants lost, that's a reality, which maybe I would like to come back to this later. But then there's all the information for the guarantee submission process that you receive your money back from Straumann is already then anonymized and sent to Straumann, so you don't have to fill out anything. Because I once visited the doctor in Paris, and he opened his drawer and he showed me like 10 or 15 implants. He said like, you know, Herbert, I prefer to go home and spend some time with the family, but that's money in my drawer instead on my bank. And somehow I can relate to it. But of course, it's money in the bank and you deserve to get the money back. So why not have 30 seconds and you get the whole guarantee, and you get not only the guarantee and the money, but you also get the knowledge that what's going on. So you get an overview about the quality in your office.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was going to get to. It's the importance of the data that we are not trained in dentistry to look into it. Let's face it. I'm an educator. I've been in academia for a long time. Just to give you a brief about in the United States how it is, the platform that all the dental schools, and I was lucky that when they introduced Axiom at NYU, which it's a software that where they put their notes in it, and it's like KPI financials and all of that, but they didn't have a platform to enter the implants. So they created a platform, and people had to plug in. It takes time, and students don't like it and stuff like that. The problem is, it was a promise that they can have access to this data, the researchers, and figure out what they can do. Unfortunately, it turned not to be like this. It turned to be a complete failure, because they can't access to this like you have it on your implant register. That's the beauty. So dentists need to understand that when you are dealing with implant dentistry, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, it's like I'm
No,
preaching
please.
now here, but it's important because you said something very important, that people says all the implants work. And I'm not going to mention, but we have two guys here in New York. They get on the podium and say all the implants are the same, and very big names, and it's sad. It used to be upsetting for me because it's not true. We've seen it, we experienced it. It's a lie. It's a bias. We go back to what the gentleman, the economist, said. It's an intuitive bias because it serves their own benefit. But here, when we know that, okay, why then the question becomes, why would I pay a premium for Straumann when all the other implants work? So that's where it's important for people to understand that there is a price because there's a quality. How would you know that? Data talks, and science is always based on that. Period. Not what it works in my hands or whatever. That's what they call it, the scientific based evidence.
It's
Yeah.
That's always also I mean, being a former scientist myself, that's really the frustration to hear people say like, I don't see this. And then you can start to like, okay, there are several reasons why you might not see it. And one of the things is you don't look it or your patient go just to the dentist next door. And there's a lot of questions that are very heavily debated, which are actually not a question of opinion, but there is a question of numbers. And for the risk to like start a flame war on this, I'm always interested in the biomaterials because I think there's very important questions open in biomaterials that can be answered with data. And if the answer is some people are more skilled than others, so it works in their hands, that's okay. But it's not about opinions, but it's real numbers that should speak.
Correct.
So
That's what I love about numbers. Numbers don't lie.
And there's another effect that I really liked that just recently somebody told me. She introduced the implant registry already 2 years in her team, ago in the team. And what she said is it becomes easier to talk about failures in the team since they have the numbers on the table. And I think This is a very important aspect for like staff engagement, that it's sometimes hard to say like, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right or what's going on. But as soon as you see like everybody's losing implants, because that's just the nature of things, if you look, then you will see that you lose implants. Then suddenly this fear of exposing myself goes out, because then you have the numbers and you can suddenly talk about improvements and not about guilt and is it stupid that I tell other people about what I'm doing? And this made me very happy, because this ultimately, if you have a basis to improve, then it's not just like collecting numbers and looking at the numbers and saying, that's how interesting 8% is worse than 3%, but it's like, what can we do about it? And then you focus really the attention on the quality.
It's funny that you mentioned that, as we're going to give you a story that I've never told you that, but it's okay. I'm going to get in trouble about it, but I'm a very honest person. I say it. So when I took over the program at NYU, and people need to understand that that was a big program. We used to see thousands of patients. That's why again, goes back to the same thing. Do you do 1, 2 implants, 3 implants, or you are like a machine, and this is where the importance. So I came in and we had a lot of infection happening, and I couldn't understand why. And so the problem is, as we said, yes, you entered the note, but the note, if there is no data collection, like to filter it, for you to see what is life happening and have a discussion with the team, then you will not be able to have an unbiased conversation. So I realized that it was the pre-op or the antibiotic coverage. So the gentleman before me decided that that's bullshit, the antibiotic. So no antibiotic should be covered. And we had these failures, and I could not understand what it is. It goes back to, remember the book, the one that wrote about the checklist.
Yes.
I forgot his author. He said he went to a hospital and they said they had the highest rate of infection and people are dying from it. And they couldn't understand why. And it turned to be that they were not following a certain protocol. So he made checklists and they dropped the rate of infection to nothing. So, so when I came and I said it to them, by the way, it's the antibiotic. I ended up in a fight that, oh, the old group with the new group, whatever, whatever, whatever. But if I had data, I have data in my hand to show, as you mentioned, the discussion would be much easier. And that goes back to, and please tell me if I'm right or wrong. The whole purpose of when the medical introduced the data, the electronic data and analysis of it, is to look at the quality of the outcome, right? That's what matters in medicine, is the outcome, the outcome, the outcome. They keep talking about it. And how can you talk about outcome if you don't measure it?
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And one of the interesting things that you see once you start connecting the dots to say how many implants have I treated, how many implants have I lost, and how many patients come back. So the implant registry also collects the input from your hygienist. So you see also after 1 year, is the implant still in place? Were there any infections? So it takes 20 seconds to fill it out, but just to say, I don't know anything about my patient, or I know that he came back and he didn't have any problems, makes all the difference. So it's this loss to follow up bias
Yeah.
when we talk about
Yes.
bias. But the end, it's like making sure that what you wanted to achieve, you achieve. And I think this, just to identify the blind spot, I think this is really the
Yeah.
big stuff.
Absolutely, because you're hitting another nail on the head, is when you're saying about do I have an infection in my implants? The audience here probably did not know that the debate about does peri-implantitis exist, that was a huge debate, and a lot of people did not believe in it. Oh, I don't have peri-implantitis. Well, do you measure it? So how do you measure it to enter the things and stuff? So yes, you're right about that. Actually, I didn't know that the hygienist can enter these things. So that's I learned a new thing with you today. Although I thought I know everything about the implant registry. So so Herbert, what do you think? There's anything else that we haven't covered that our listener like to hear? Because I just don't want to hijack everything, and I want you to tell me if I'm missing something.
No, I think we covered the main topics. Of course,
Mm,
there's some questions that they typically get asked when I present the implant registry. So the first thing is, how about data security?
mhm,
So this, of course, is a very important thing, and it's a lot about trust. And the implant registry and Straumann Access has a cybersecurity certification. It's like this 27001. So the platform is cybersecurity certified, which is a very important thing if you talk about patient data. And there's also HIPAA and GDPR compliance, also the privacy laws. The second thing is, can you use the data for research? Because very often when you collect data, you would like to do something about it. And in principle, you can use it, but you still have to apply or use all the ethics regulations in your country. So this is the one thing.
but
And I
Strowman
think
itself
that
is not using this data for their own advantage, are they?
so while to a certain no, it would be not correct to say we don't use it at all,
Mhm,
because of course we do collect data and anonymize the data because we are also interested in the performance of our products.
mhm,
However, if you submit a guarantee case, this is also on our side, and we not only reimburse the money, but we use this very strictly to manage our quality and use this as a quality measure. So this is of course the same process that we also use in the implant registry to say if there's a complaint, we of course want to understand it better and also see what works and what does not work. So there's anonymized data use, but we don't sell it, we don't give it out. So it's still your data. but it's similar to what we learn like when you submit a complaint. So no, it's very important to be clear that of course we want to learn from those data, and we want to improve our data, but we don't sell the data or make a product from this data itself.
Okay. Yeah,
And
that's important for people to know. Yeah. Mm.
And the next big thing that we're working on is one of the challenges is if you compare your numbers with your colleague next door, or interestingly, for example, with the Canadian colleague, and you have very young patients, and your colleague has elderly edentulous patients, it's very hard to compare, to make a one-to-one comparison. However, having a certain number of implants, and if everything goes right, we are running a bet when we're going to jump to 40,000 implants in our database. And my bet is next Tuesday, so it will be one of those days. So because we have enough data, we can adjust for patient risks. Mm-hmm. To say if the patient is a smoker, there's a higher risk of implant failure. So the next thing that we're going to, or what we are now piloting, is to allow a benchmarking service that adjusts for the patient risks. Mm-hmm. And what we see is that it takes out to say, my patients are always sicker than yours, so everything is nothing can be compared, but to say like, okay, we can have head-to-head comparison, which will never take out the expertise of the dentist. In the end, it's the basis of a discussion how to improve. Data is never just data, but it's always the basis on how to draw conclusions to make something better for somebody.
Absolutely. And I would love you to add on the implant registry, since I have you here, is the BMI. The obesity or the underweight. I'm onto something. So I think that it should be nicer to enter it directly on the implant registry, and you make it to calculate itself. They put the height and weight. It's very important because that will complete your medical collection. I think we are missing something there. I don't want to talk about something that I don't haven't analyzed it correctly, but I think if you add it, you'll do me a favor, you do everybody a favor. I think that is something very important to look into. Medical is very important, and one more thing is the patients are getting older, and I have a 105-year-old patient. Completely cognitive. Body is fading. She has full upper and full bottom. 7 implants, brand new mark implant on the maxilla and on the mandible. I did not put them. It's Dr. Bert Langer, the icon. I had the honor to take over his practice, and this is a wonderful patient. It's such a beautiful story. It's 0 peri-implantitis, 0 bone loss on this woman, 105. She's still living. I saw her, matter of fact, last week. The reason I'm saying that, it's when I started doing implant early 90s, and just to put it in perspective for patients, for the listeners, because a lot of the young generation listen to podcasts, different to this. We didn't know we had 1 implant. Let's face it, we had Branomark. The implant Straumann was an ITI called. It was a tissue level, was not very well accepted in the States. So we were exposed to 1, and then before I graduated, 3i came about, and then everything changed, and then stereos. There was the stereos came up, and there was a sweet vent and screw vent from Niznik. There was the people don't want to talk about it because it was hydroxyapatite at that time, and roughened surfaces, and look at it, everything turned into roughened surfaces. But so people don't understand these things, but we didn't think that the implants will last more than 30, 40 years because Branomark did the studies in the 60s to the 70s, and the time frame was 15, 20 years when he did the study. So if you take this patient, 105, she had her implants for 50 years. So, I mean, in reality, we are facing this pattern of patient living longer. And they come to me and they say, I'm 80, why do I need an implant? Huh. You know, my answer to them, well, I have 105, completely healthy. So now, why am I saying that? So and the reason I'm saying that is it helps the clinician help the patient. If the patient comes and tells you, I'm 80, well, it doesn't mean that you're going to die tomorrow. And actually, implant helps you because you can chew better because your stomach cannot chew better, digest better, sorry, not to chew, digest. So it's actually a good service for yourself. So one of the things that the clinicians are not understanding is the importance, what do you do with the data to tell your patient? Now, the reason I knew about how many patients I have in that age category is your colleague or ex-colleague, Michael, was, challenging me. And then we did a study on our data and we saw that we have, you know how much? 3% of our patients are in the hundreds, between 90 and 105. That's huge. Okay. And my two locations. So bottom line to it is I can come to the patient and tell them confidently, yeah, no, you might live to 100. So how do you want to chew, with a denture or without teeth? So that's, again, is something that we need to look into, the medical and the long-term, the outcome. We don't look at it as dentists. So thank God we have people like you, Herbert, that help us in these things. And I mean it very sincerely. You are one of the things I love the most about you, you're such a scientist. So you love the science, you live through it. As you said it during your even when you're doing your laundry, you are listening and learning. So, and that's a huge thing. I applaud you on it because it's a life learning, and at least I found somebody other than me that likes to learn. So, so it makes me feel better. So, thank you, Herbert, to make the time. I really appreciate it. You know, I know the difference of time and everything is not easy. But I hope that this will leave a good impact for people that listening, that to start learning about data and the importance of it, to use it in their own clinic. That's what is most important. Your patients are your best advocate. So if you show them that you care about their data, the well-being, and the long term for them, they will trust you more. And you want to say anything else, or we before we close that episode?
Well, thank you for your kind words. Thank you for actually, you were the one who had to get up so early in the morning.
Right.
Thank you for your energy also that you bring into this topic. It's such a big pleasure to work with those individuals like yours that focus so much on the patient to improve the outcome on the patient, but also have the understanding how this connects to the success of the clinic.
Yeah, no, it's thank you. And I hope that this will leave an impact for people. You know, I'm not going to stay forever in that profession. So somebody else has to take over. And I'm sure you too, you will find something else in your life. And so for that, thank you so much, Herbert. That's really, it was a fascinating. I didn't expect it to be so interesting. I love data. I know you love data, but I didn't know that it's going to turn out to be such a nice episode. And I hope everybody will share the same feeling about it. Thank you so much, and
Thank you so
have a
much.
great day. Till next
Take
time, I
care.
see you.
Next
Bye-bye.
time. Bye-bye.
Bye.